Jay Reed got into Scientology in 1971 in New York City when he was 21 years old, and he eventually joined the Sea Organization and ended up on the flagship Apollo, where he became L. Ron Hubbard's personal steward for a short period of time. He's got some great stories to tell, and he's got some surprising observations about L. Ron Hubbard that I think you'll find informative. Stay tuned for Jay Reed. Greetings. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host, Janis Gillham, Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
Good, Mark. Good day, everyone.
Exactly. Well, we've got a new guest. This is somebody, new person to interview that we want to introduce to everybody. And his name's Jay Reed, and he got in Scientology in New York City in 1971. And he was immediately recruited into the Sea Organization, eventually ending up on the flagship Apollo. And he was L. Ron Hubbard's personal steward for a short period of time. And then he eventually left the Sea Organization, and he's a successful artist since then. And he's here to tell his story. He's got some interesting stories to share with us, right, Janis?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, so let's get into this.
All right. So without further ado, let's bring on Jay Reed. How you doing, Jay?
Good.
Hi, Jay.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Have you been following our channel? Have you been watching it? Or?
Yes, I've seen about maybe at least a dozen of the shows, and you know, I found them interesting. I liked how your approach is, and it's super straightforward. And after watching for a while, I thought I had a story to tell, which I've only told it to individuals before.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, people told me I should write a book, but, you know, that didn't happen. So I thought this might be a good opportunity to at least tell my story.
That sounds great.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, Jay, go ahead. How did you get into Scientology back in, 1971, was it? Where were you, and how'd you get into Scientology?
I was... A friend of mine and me had hitchhiked across the country from Los Angeles. That's where I'm from, born and raised in Pasadena area. And we were in New York, and we got jobs. And, you know, my plan was to save up some money and eventually maybe go to Europe or something like that. I turned 21, just turned 21 when one day after work, I was walking down the street, and somebody approached me, or a couple people, with back then it was like the TR0 where they don't blink their eyes, just kind of like, you know, staring straight at you, and asked me if I would be interested to take a personality test or whatever. Anyway, I ended up walking into the New York org and start talking to them. My friend, my best friend, he's still my best friend, told me, I'm having nothing to do with this. This is not good, you know. But I said, well, I'm going to check it out anyway. So I signed up for the first course. I think it was communication course, introductory. And so I started there, and after just a few days of being in there, I attended a Sea Org recruiting tour thing. I didn't know what the Sea Org even was or anything like that. Uh-huh. But, you know, it was by Frank Friedman, and I listened to him speak, and he was quite impressive for me.
He's very good.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, he's cool. You know, it was going to be like this. Also, I met this girl right away. That you know, one thing led to the next, and you know, it was like I'm making all these connections instantly, being in there in the org, and So he was saying if I joined the Sea Org, that they'd send me out to LA and I would go on to I think it was a class 10 auditors training.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, well, I know that's probably not going to happen, but I said, well, what the heck? I told my friend, I'm just going to go for it. Signing a billion-year contract, it meant nothing to me at that time.
You didn't think it was very serious, right?
No,
Yeah. You were 21
no.
years old. Yeah.
Exactly. It was kind of like, oh, it's just going to be another adventure.
So,
I told him, and Frank Friedman had this whole group. There was like maybe about a dozen people there, and 6 of us just signed up. So the next thing I know, I go out to LA and I go onto the court. So I'm at USLO. And
United States Liaison Office.
yes, on Beacon Street and Beacon Avenue, I guess. Anyway, they put me onto the course. And after like the second day, I find out, no, they're going to take you off course and send you down to the boulevard for sea training or whatever. Okay, I'm fine with that too. Let's go. I was down there for just a few days. I didn't really I don't think I completed all the training or anything. And then I find out I've been assigned to Mimeo files at USLO. I came back up to USLO and worked learned how to operate the mimeograph down in the basement of USLO for a while, and was living in a house.
Yeah, Jay, I'm sorry, Jay. I just wanted to explain to our viewers, some of them might not know what Mimeo is, because these days, with all the apps and printers and stuff like this, but Mimeo is where, like a policy written by Hubbard would be typed up on what is called a stencil. And then that stencil is put on the drum of a machine that has ink in it. And then you crank that drum and the issues come out printed out. It's nothing like today's where, you have it prints it out in one full swoop. This is very different.
Right. Yeah. And I learned that and I got very good at it. So I started, they put me in the house across the street. We had a couple houses there that was living like in the basement or something, while I worked there. Well, I worked there for a number of months, and the Mimeo, the chief Mimeo officer left the Sea Org, and so I sort of became that person. And then shortly after that, it was decided that all of the LA orgs, all their Mimeo, they each had their own Mimeo section, and they had their own files, and none of them were that good. So it was decided that all of them were going to be put into one location called LA Central Mimeo. And I was appointed the in charge of that operation. And they basically got another building near CC, Celebrity Center, and the org proceeded to just bring all their files over and essentially just dump them on the floor. And there was a pile that was at least 8 foot high of all these, not just policy letters, but bulletins and flag orders and all kind of stuff from L. Ron Hubbard, that had written, that had been mimeographed and were in course packs and all that. So I had one other person. His name was John Toten. He was like an old timer. He was sort of an honorary Sea Org guy. He was retired, and he was helping me. And then eventually I had a guy who's my friend, Sal Princiotta. He worked at Celebrity Center, and he was having some issues with them. So he kind of just came over and started just showing up where I was every day and helping me organize all this stuff. And so they brought all these files, and we put all this stuff in order, made file folders for everything, got it kind of all sorted out. And then students could come and purchase, if they're missing something or wanted to research something, they could come and buy individual bulletins or policy letters from us. So we kept like a little coin box and stuff we would sell these things to, all these members. So I did that for at least maybe a year or so. And then ASHO pubs, they decided that it would be better to put LA Central Mimeo under ASHO publications. And so they ended up getting another building over by ASHO. And LA Central Mimeo moved over there. And by then I had like 2 or 3 different operators, and it was, I had like maybe four people working. And I always kept my stats up, okay, the whole time. I never had a down, I never had any ethics problems. And the thing that I liked about it was that we were in a separate location from the rest of the org. So we didn't have to deal with a lot of stuff that they did. And, particularly like ethics matters and stuff like that, we were kind of just left to do our own thing. And so I was kind of fine with that. And it was like we developed our own little, for instance, Liberty. If people were working under me, my policy was that take the whole day off, on a Saturday or whatever, because you've earned it. So I was always pushing them to make sure that if they were running a mimeograph, that they always had at least one copy more than they did the previous week. And
it's kind of like the executives of the organization, they wouldn't be pressured for how many Mimeo issues were printed, only unless there was some new LRH bulletin or technical bulletin that needed to get out right away. Then it became a priority. But like other than that, it was just business as usual. I would imagine they were getting more pressure in terms of how many people were in the organization getting training or processing and that type of thing.
Right.
But that's a good plan where if you printed off 10,000 issues that week, so the next week you print off 10,001. And that way your stat is up.
You're always up.
So that's exactly the way we did it. And the only other catch with that was we had to have, you weren't allowed to go on Liberty unless you passed a white glove cleaning inspection of your bed area and all that. Well, we covered for each other, like, if one person was gone the whole day, then we would make sure that their space was clean, or they would before they left.
Yeah.
And but the MAA at ASHO, he was kind of onto me a little bit. He knew that I was fudging some of the rules, and so him and I were a little bit on not the best terms, but there was nothing he could do. Right, and we were the first ones to receive anything that LRH wrote that was coming to the United States. It came to me, and I was then, ASHO gets off 200 copies, AO, all these places. That would be our highest priority, is to get that out right away, whatever it was. And then keep extra copies for the files. So anyway, after being there for about, I don't know, it must have been 6 months or more than that. One day I get a flag order that says Jay Reed is appointed the Mimeo on flagship Apollo as the Mimeo operator. And I'm reading this thing, I'm going, oh my God. Now I've been going to course, but I didn't really I didn't really get much auditing this entire time, okay, for a couple of years. I was just a worker, but I was kind of okay with it somewhat. I did do study and I completed, the student hat and all these kinds of courses, but didn't really do any auditing training for sure. So I get this policy, I get this thing, and it's a flag order, and I'm thinking I'm going to go, no matter what. This is part of my plan, is traveling and seeing the world. I'm going to go to the flagship and see what it's like there. Maybe meet L. Ron Hubbard, So, but there was one little snag. Okay, so I had to pass a sec check before I could go, and I had one little withhold, which was that I owed about $30 to the till. We had we would my whole crew, if somebody was short on money, they'd write an IOU and I would give them cash out of our cash drawer,
right,
that they would pay back. Well, it just so happened when I got this flag order sent to me, I was in debt $30, and I had no way to pay it back. I didn't have the money, and none of the people working with me had the money. So
and that was more than your paycheck.
Yeah, that was 3 of my paychecks. I received $10 a week the entire time I was in the Sea Org.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, I knew what would happen if I brought this up to anybody, like the MAA. He would probably, I probably wouldn't be going. So I told myself, I got to do the sec check, but I've got to suppress, not think about the fact that I owed this money. I mean, to me at the time, it was kind of like, $30 is not a lot of money, but I was in the Sea Org, and it was, it was something I didn't want to have it cause me to not be able to go. So right. The first day I had this sec check and went through all these questions, and I was trying to just not think about the money or anything. And we went through the whole thing, and I didn't have a floating needle or anything. It was just kind of ended. He says, we're going to have to try this again tomorrow. So I thought, well, okay. So I went back again the next day and went through the whole sec check again. And at the end, he's kind of looking at me. I'm looking at him for a minute or so. And then finally he says, your needle floated. And that was it. I was done. So
which means you pass, basically. That's for our viewers out there. Your needle floating.
Yeah, I passed. I was done with the sec check. There was nothing else going to stop me now from going. And I had a sort of a brief girlfriend going at that time too. And I told her, I'm sorry, I can't stay. I've got to go. This is just, it's my one opportunity. I'm gonna have to go for it. So we split up at that time.
Right. So you got these orders to go to flagship Apollo, and you have no idea where it's at, right? You have no idea.
Right. No.
So tell us about your journey in terms of getting there, and what was your impressions when you first got there?
Okay.
Well, and what port did you arrive in?
Okay. Yeah. I flew. Well, I knew it was in Europe somewhere, but I didn't know exactly where I was going or anything. Well, I flew to Lisbon, and then flew from there to Madeira. Mm-hmm. So I got on the ship in Madeira, in Funchal.
Okay. It's just so people know, Madeira is off the coast of Morocco in the Atlantic, but it's a Portuguese island.
Right. And when I got there, it was like, this is cool. This is great. So I go onto the ship, and I find out, they say, well, the ship right now is really, there's a lot of people on the ship. And so when they went to give me a berth, they said, well, right now we don't have any berths that are available. So what they put me was, they said, just be for a few days. They they made a bunk underneath the bottom bunk of one of the bunk beds, and it was like where you had to slide in and lay there, and if you wanted to turn over, you had to slide back out and turn over and go back in again.
It was like you were being shoveled into a shelf.
Yeah, there was not enough room to turn over in there. Anyway, that's how it started, and I thought, this is cool. I mean, I just learned all these new things, the galley, the food, the milk that had kind of like stuff in it, I wasn't used to. I don't know if it was powdered milk. But anyway, I went into the Mimeo area.
What year was this? Is this 1970?
This would have been like, I think at the end of 73. So the whole time I was on the ship, which was about 10 months, we did a lot of traveling. We went to the Canary Islands, and we were up and down the Spanish coast and so forth. So I learned, I was immediately assigned to be a lookout as my.
That was going to be my question. What was your sea duty post or whatever? You were a lookout?
Sea watch.
Yeah, I was a lookout.
Where were you a lookout on? What part of the ship?
The up at the what do they call it?
Flying bridge.
The flying bridge. Yeah, the flying bridge.
Yeah, I was going to show
you. I was just looking out with binoculars, basically, in all directions. I think that's the flying bridge. I know that when I was up there, it was at night. And we were assigned with binoculars to just look around us, and if we see anything, I think it was a quarterman. I forget who it was. There was somebody that I would let know. Yeah. Okay. So I went to Mimeo, and at that time, her name was Sue. You probably knew her.
Sue Baker.
Sue Baker. She was the Mimeo Mimeo person in charge, and so I started working under her. But she was.
Where
was Mimeo in the ship?
It was down. It was not at the very bottom of the ship, but it was low.
It was actually. It was in lower hold number 2.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it was.
Yeah, you had the tween decks, and then you had hold 2, and then you had lower hold 2. So it was below the sea level.
Oh, wow.
Luckily for me, I did not get. I'm not the type that gets seasick at all. So that part, it didn't bother me. But anyway, I started working with her, but she was going to retire or leave at some point. And she did when I was there. And another guy, I think his name was Clint, became the
Clint Bizot.
Clint Bizot.
Clint Bizot, yeah.
And Stoney, was Stoney in there? Ron Stone?
The name's familiar, but I can't remember him.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was working there just on a daily basis and being a crew member. And, I was just, I was looking forward to my liberties because now I'm in these other ports.
Yeah.
So I could go ashore. And I'd go ashore with other members of the ship, and of course we'd all go to a restaurant and order Chateaubriand, which was the big thing back then for us. But anyway, so I was working on the ship, but at that time I started looking around and seeing all the people that were there and so forth. There was a guy from my high school that was on the ship that I found out was there. He was, which is, it's got to be high not probable chance of that happening. He was LRH's, he worked in the music area. He was an engineer of some kind. And so I got to see him again and so forth. But after I was there for a number of months, I got this call from to go up to the household unit, and Ulf Ronquist was the guy who was kind of in charge of it. And he told me that the LRH steward was going to have to leave the ship, and that they had looked around the entire ship to determine who else could take his place. And they had come up that I was like the most able to do it at the time, or whatever, that, he wanted to know if I would consider doing that.
Let me ask you a question. Had you seen Hubbard before that, when you were in Mimeo, when you first got to the ship at all?
I might have seen him just once, like walking along the decks, not very often. No, I did not see him, much at all. I'd never met him or anything. So it was, but I knew that he had been in a motorcycle accident. And so anyway, but I was at the point where I was thinking to myself, I'm not sure I even want to be in the Sea Org. I don't think, when I was there and I saw the people that were super dedicated to the Sea Org, I'm thinking, I'm not one of those people. I'm just, don't think that I'm not going to last, this lifetime or anything like that. So I was considering asking to leave. Now, there was I had met this girl on board. She had come to the ship from LA, and she was like this really vivacious type girl. Anyway, she worked in the galley for a while, and then she just said, "No, I don't want to be here." And she left after about 3 months. Well, within that 3 months, her and I sort of struck up a little bit of a relationship. And so, she gave me her name. Her name was Tanya. Now, I haven't, I eventually got together with her after I left the Sea Org for like 3 years. But at the time, you were supposed to be, if you're to have 2D stuff like that, you're supposed to be married. And we had this one funny incident where we wanted to get away somewhere just by ourselves, just to make out or whatever. And so we went up to the forecastle, and there was a room in there that had it was basically a bunch of laundry bags, or it was just stuff thrown on the floor. It was just, you couldn't even hardly walk on the floor. It was just all bags. So anyway, we go in there and lay down on the bags, and I closed the door and I put my foot up against the back of the door, in case anybody came, so we could kiss and whatever. So we were there for a little bit, and then all of a sudden somebody comes and starts trying to open the door. And, I'm like saying, shh, don't say a word, don't say anything. We don't want to get caught or anything. So I had put my leg and my foot up against this door, and the person kept trying to, break it open, because they knew something was up, but they didn't know what. And so after a while, they just gave up and took off to go find somebody else to help them or something. And in the meantime, we just like, get out of here. Let's go. Let's quit. But anyway, this girl left the church and went back. And so I put her address in my wallet for later, whatever. So anyway, I decided, well, when I was talking to Ulf Ronquist, I said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Let's do it. I'm going to become his steward. And
Hubbard steward. Yeah. So the funny story was that the very, very first day I was there on the post, as soon as I hadn't met LRIH or anything like that, I meet Mary Sue, and she says, come with me. And she takes me into the bathroom, because LRH
And the first time I see LRH, he's in the shower. And she says, I'm going to show you how to wash him, because he couldn't wash himself. He couldn't bend over. He was like hurt. So
from the motorbike accident.
Right. And so she showed me how to soap him down and all this stuff at the time. And then after I was be done with washing him, he would get dried off. And then the messengers, and this is when I think I met you, Janis, but I didn't really know the messengers. I just saw you guys there. That you guys would take over and then get him his clothes would be all laid out.
Right. You guys would get him, the males would get him into his underwear, his boxer shorts, and then he'd come out of the bathroom and we would finish getting him dressed.
Right.
Yeah. Janis, can you explain the motorcycle accident just for the viewers who may not have seen this before on our earlier shows?
Yeah, it was in late 73 where he would go out on his motorbike and just ride. Sometimes someone went with him. Sometimes he went on his own. Anyway, he was out riding. He hit an oil slick on a curve and skidded off the road. And he ended up breaking some ribs because he had his camera bag under his arm. And so that got smashed and his shoulder got messed up. And so when he came back, some locals actually found him and helped him get up and back onto his bike, and he rode down to the ship. And Bert Rousseau, I think, was the transport IC. He and I ran down because I was on watch and I was waiting for Hubbard to come back. And I'm like, something's wrong, because he was coming back real slow and careful. So we ran down and I grabbed the bike so he could get off. And that's when he said that he was PTS to the Spanish government, because that morning he'd just been told by Mary Sue that he was not allowed to go to Spain anymore. So anyway, he actually stayed in his room for a long time trying to heal. And Jay, do you remember the red chair?
Yeah, I do.
The famous red chair, Janis is told. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would call it the red chair from hell. This Hubbard couldn't lie down on his bed because of the broken ribs and the shoulders. So he said, well, let me try sitting up. So the steward, maybe it was you, Jay, but someone went down to the hold and went through the furniture from the Las Palmas house, Estrella, and brought up this red chair.
No,
and so Hubbard... Well, Hubbard would sit in this red chair, but he couldn't, he was heavy, and he couldn't sit down using one arm, then the other arm was in a sling. So us messengers would take his arm and we would lower him down into the chair and or pull him up. And you had to hold on tight so you didn't fall and just drop him. And that did happen at occasions. But we would then get wads of cotton wool and stuff it around him to get him comfortable so his arm wasn't hurting and his ribs weren't aching. And we'd finally get him comfortable and asleep. But then what would happen is, sitting in the chair, his head would nod forward and wake him up. So we then got a scarf and we put the scarf over his head and tied it around the back of the chair. And you're talking, we're all like these 16-year-old idiots with no world experience, no nursing experience, nothing, So we tie his head back to the chair, and that worked. And then there was one time we had a tripod and had his arm hanging in the tripod. And, he had a temper while everybody's messing, trying to get him comfortable. And then finally it was like, oh, he's asleep. And David Rousseau was on watch at the time, and the messengers are now creeping out of the cabin to go out into the hallway. And David kicked the tripod going out. Oh! Yelling and screaming again, and David was kicked off watch, and then the messengers had to calm him back down and get him back to sleep. But yeah, that's why I call that the red chair from hell.
Okay.
Jay, was that the first time you met him? Like, he must have been in sour mood then too when you were dealing with him, right?
Yeah, he was not in the happiest mood when I met him, but and after you know the bathing stuff went on, then I was shown how to his vitamins. I was in charge of his vitamins because he had a lot of different things he took on a daily basis. So part of my job was to make sure that it was done exactly as the formula called out. So I would do that, and then I was there for his breakfast, serving him breakfast. I don't remember if I might have set the plates down, but anyway, I was there for that. And then I didn't do too much more after that during the day. I was only there mainly in the mornings.
Can I ask you something, Jay?
Yeah.
Some people have claimed that Hubbard was on drugs or medication during that time period and all that. But you're saying you were giving him vitamins. Did you see any kind of illegal drugs or anything like that?
No, okay. No, not at all. But when I was with him, because there was times when I'm just with him personally only, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he would, well, first of all, he was kind of missing my withhold. He was saying, he'd look at me and he says, "Is everything okay?" And I would say, "Yeah, I'm fine." But I was at the time thinking, I'm probably not the right guy for him.
And you weren't thinking about the $30 that you owed?
No, I wasn't thinking about that. But we talked about, I was on the basketball team. We had a basketball team on there on the Apollo, where it started up when I was there. And it was kind of a ragtag team kind of thing. We didn't even have uniforms or anything. And I remember going to, I think it might have been in Madeira. We put together a team, and the bus took us to go play this unknown opposing team. Well, it turns out it was the main high school team. And when we got to the gym, the place was packed. It was like everybody in the whole school was coming to see this game. They had uniforms and everything, and we had like just cut off jeans and stuff like that.
But wait a minute, Jay. Yeah, this is a high school. These are 18-year-olds, and you guys are all in your 20s.
Right. That's right. And it made it about an even game. Okay.
Was Wendell Reynolds on that team, Janis and Jay?
Yes.
I remember Wendell Reynolds. I remember he's tall.
I have a photo of the team, but I think Wendell was on it. Andre Tabayoyan, possibly Stu Moreau. There was a bunch of them. I'll have to pull out that photo one day.
Yeah,
maybe you're in it.
Because I only remember going to one game. I think this is right before I got assigned to LRH. You know, I was on the team, but I only played really one game.
Did LRH talk to you about that? I mean, you had mentioned the basketball. Yeah,
that's kind of what we talked about. A good portion of our conversation was about sports, and just sports in general, but also about the ship and the basketball team.
What was your impressions of Hubbard at that time? Like when you were there with him, was he personable? Was he interested in what you were saying? I mean,
yes.
What were your dealings like?
I basically had all good impressions when I was with him. He treated me nicely, and we had conversations that, I didn't have anything going. I mean, I knew he could get angry. I think I saw it a couple of times where he was yelling at somebody for something, but for me, I was all good with it. And, I had a lot of, I didn't know all what he was up to at the time. So I was just trying to do my part,
Right.
But it only took about 2 weeks when I finally decided, okay, I saw that the people around him would, just give their lives almost for Ron and everything. And I thought, I am just not that. And I think Ron needs somebody more qualified than me, more committed. So I went to my senior, Ulf, and told him, Ulf, I want you to remove me from post. I wasn't removed from post. I asked to be taken off. And then I told him, and I think I'm just going to route out of the Sea Org, period. And so I got busted.
Did they ask you why? Did they ask you why? Was it?
Yeah.
Did you say, I'm really not? This is not really for me. Is that what basically you were telling them? Yeah.
Basically what I told them. And I didn't want to face LRH himself about this, so I definitely went to my senior, and so of course he busted me right there, and sent me to the RPF. Well, the RPF had just, I was probably like the second iteration of it or something. It was new, and
rehabilitation project force, the Scientology training, retraining camp or whatever. Yeah.
And basically I said, no, I don't want to go into the RPF. I just want to leave the ship and route me out. Well, they said, in the meantime, until we get this all squared away, you're going to have to go into the RPF. So I went there and I was, not cooperative at all. I was like not wanting to do any work or things like that. And it was kind of like, but I was wearing, got the black boiler suit and all that. And, I was trying to get I think the person was named Rebecca. She was in charge of the passports and stuff like that. I was told her, I want you to get my passport. I can't leave without the passport, and I want to route out of the ship, and I want to get going on this. It isn't something I want to just wait around. Oh, okay, yeah, we're going to take care of it. But after a while, I realized that they probably weren't, they were hoping I was just going to get rehabilitated. So they basically just left me in the RPF and didn't do anything. And I was, only 20 something, and I knew my rights. I wasn't forceful on anything. Plus I'd been in the Sea Org for 3 years. Everybody I knew was friendly. It was sort of my group. I'm in this group.
Right.
I was feeling like I'm an enemy, or, I was going to leave the group, and obviously lower condition kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm in the RPF and not liking it at all. And I came to the conclusion that they were never going to let me route out. That, and so what happened was I decided I was going to jump ship and go for it without my passport. And so there was a point, I think we were in.
What port were we in?
I think we were in Setúbal.
Setúbal, okay.
Setúbal, okay. Now in Setúbal, there's a dock space there where in the early morning it gets really low tide, and the ship would drop down, and from the lower deck, you could literally jump onto the dock. You'd probably have like a 6 or 8 foot drop, but you could jump the ship. Only the thing is that, the gangplank and the quartermaster were further down toward the back. So I figured, well, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it. I've got to be totally ready, get my stuff packed, and do it that early morning and make sure nobody's out there looking around and just go for it. And so one morning, that's what I did. I threw my bag off and jumped ship, and then just picked up and ran. Now I only had on me like maybe $40 or something. And my plan was to go to Lisbon, which isn't that far, and then go and get another passport and figure out what I was going to do from there. But so I did that. I ran for it and went into town, took a bus to Lisbon. And when I got to Lisbon, I met a couple of these girls and a guy that were from the United States that were staying in a hostel.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, why don't you just go with us? You can just stay here tonight, and so forth and so on. I didn't explain that I was just jumped a Scientology ship or anything. I just said I'd lost my passport and I was traveling around and so forth.
Yeah.
So that night I would go there with them, but they wouldn't let me stay there because I don't have any passport. No matter what, they said, nope, you can't stay here. We're sorry. That's it. You got to go. So I went back into town and I went and bought a little sleeping bag, and I slept outside that night. And got up the next morning and went in to find where the consulate was, and got there maybe at about 11 in the morning, when there's this entire group from the ship that were there waiting for me.
Sea Org members, right?
Yeah, Sea Org members. There was maybe about 6 or 8 of them. I mean, a whole group. And
Wow.
And they said, let's talk this over. We can work all this out. We just want you to come back to the ship. You don't have to do this and this, that, and the other. And I said, okay, but this guy, I want to get it handled. So I went back to the ship, and they sent me immediately back to the RPF.
Oh, God.
Typical.
Like lie. Hey, it's all going to be good. And you get back and right back to the pooper.
So when I got back to the RPF, they sent 2 guys, and they took me into this room, and they said, and I got the idea that I was going to have to fight them to get out of this room. And they wanted me to agree to complete the RPF, no matter what. Just don't be a wimp. Don't back down. Just face it. Just do it. And, anyway, I was in with them for a while, and I'm thinking about all this stuff. And finally I said, okay, I'll tell you what, let's just end this. I'll go through the RPF. I don't care. Let's just do it. So I came out, and I immediately just completely changed my attitude toward everything. I became like the most aggressive cleaner. I was like, cleaning toilets, I don't care. I just worked really super hard when I came back out. And I went from being the lowest member of the RPF to the rising star in the RPF. And there was a point where, so I did that for like a couple of months. I was like just gung-ho going for it. Now I got assigned in the RPF, you get assigned you're supposed to study like 5 hours a day or audit or whatever. Right. And you get assigned another person to do this with.
A twin. Yeah, twin. Yeah.
Well, I got assigned this kid, my twin that got assigned to me was a kid. He was about 13 years old. And he was a crazy kid. I don't know how long he'd been in the Sea Org, or I think he might have been like an upcoming messenger, but maybe he didn't make it or something. But he ended up being my twin. And so really our training didn't really go anywhere. We weren't making that much progress with each other at all.
Do you remember who he was? Do you remember his name?
His name was Lonnie.
Lonnie Garapi.
Yes, that's who.
Yeah, he was known for stealing things, and he stole Kenny Campbellman's flute and threw it overboard, some jewelry of David Ziff's, and that's why he was put on the RPF.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, he was my twin, and so while being in the RPF bosun got, I don't know if he completed, I think he completed, because in the RPF you have 2 parts you have to complete. One is your auditing program to completion, and then the other side is the confronting mess type. And you get these, back then it was like you get an armband. if you'd
Yeah,
complete.
just so our viewers know, MEST is matter, energy, space, and time. It's basically things and handling hard labor, and Scientologists refer to it as MEST work, MEST, MEST work. Yeah.
Right.
Right. And then the armbands, you got a gold armband if you had done certain steps of the RPF.
Uh-huh. Actually, I forget about a little bit about the armbands, but I still have, that's part of my story. Anyway, for being this like super hustling guy, I went kind of to the top of the RPF. Mm-hmm. And when this bosun left, they ended up having a new election, and I was elected the RPF bosun.
Oh, wow. You were put in charge
of the whole RPF. And there was like maybe about 50 members in there at that time.
I just remembered the motto of the RPF. The RPF is what we make it. The RPF is where we make it. I just popped into my head. I was anyway, go ahead.
Okay. And then also what happened was I find out that I hear that L. Ron Hubbard himself is CSing my folders. And I get a new auditor, Alex Sabursky, was he was in the RPF too at the time.
Was he a class 12 at that time?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so he was like one of the most highly trained auditors in Scientology. And when he said LRH was CSing his folder, that means case supervising. That means he was looking at the sessions that were being done with Jay and Alex, and basically making sure that they were following the technical procedures properly. Anyway, go ahead.
So, but he basically started auditing me, and he was basically, it was kind of like, I don't know, some kind of, not security checks, but it was basically inferring that I had blown the ship because I had I was an alcoholic, which was not the case at all. That there was reason, I had some kind of pulls for, I can't even hardly remember at the time what it was, but and this was supposedly from LRH's CSing. And I knew that was way off, that L. Ron Hubbard did not have the right information about me at all.
Let me ask you a question. Was it interiorization? Because a lot of times that Hubbard came up with this technology of the interiorization rundown, which is basically that a lot of times people would blow because they were trying to get out and it wasn't handled properly. So it was they called it, you were out int, right, Janis? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's
I don't think it was that. I don't know.
Okay.
But it was a short-lived thing, He audited me just a little bit, and then basically I was, just back to having my partner, twin. But anyway, so now I'm the RPF bosun of the whole group, and I appointed David Ziff as my MAA. He was in the RPF at that time too, and he agreed to work with me. I thought we were doing like a great job with taking care of the ship and everything until, so we did this, David and we did this thing where we came to the conclusion that it was possible to complete the sort of like the mess side of the RPF before you completed your auditing program, that you could get your armband for that. And so we started giving a few of those out to different people that we knew. Like I knew I had confronted as much mess. This is the way I interpreted it at the time. I was flat on it. There was nothing else I was, couldn't do or was afraid to do or whatever, resisted. Well, one day I find out that I've been busted from the RPF bosun, that I'm now just back in the RPF, that because I interpreted L. Ron Hubbard's flag order incorrectly. I said, what are you talking about? Who interpreted that? Who said that? Based on what? And it had to do with that. It had to do with that somebody could be flat on this certain part of it without completing the rest of it. And that wasn't L. Ron Hubbard's intention. So that cost me the job. Well, and I found out it was supposedly Milt Wolf was the one who he had completed the RPF, and I think he was the bosun, but that the order had come down from him to remove me from post. So when that happened, I just said, forget it. This is ridiculous. Now I've been incorrectly removed from this post when I was doing a great job, no complaints, and now I'm being busted by just somebody interpreting a flag order. So that's when I said, that's it. I went and said, I got to get off this ship. You know, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I'm not going to do work. I'm not going to just participate at all. I was, but I was still in the RPF when this happened.
Right.
And this was one of the guys that I met while I was there was Jeff Levin. He was kind of like in the same boat as me. He was in the RPF. He wanted to get out. And so we kind of hung around a little bit together at these last days. Well, after a few days before had been busted after this, the LRH sent this. He had probably heard that there was some people on the ship that weren't happy. There was discontent. So he sent out a survey. Do you want to be on the flagship Apollo? Yes or no? Do you want to leave the ship? Yes or no? And a bunch of people on the ship answered, yeah, no, I don't want to be here. And yes, I want to leave, including me. And so he wrote and said, okay, let him go. So that's when, and Jeff Levin left at the same time I did. So we got our bags together. This was going to happen like in a couple of days or whatever. We're still in the RPF, but we got together our stuff, and there was one morning we're going to meet up on deck. Now we were in Madeira at the time. So we get our bags and we go up on the deck, and as we're waiting to find out what's going to happen, are they going to take us off the ship, LRH walks out onto the deck, and he walks up to me, and I have at that time like tons of charge. I'm leaving the ship, right? I'm leaving everybody I know. I'm getting out of the Sea Org. And anyway, he walks up to me and he says, how's everything? I said, fine, we're leaving today, sir. And he sticks his hand out. He has like no charge on this whatsoever. He's just all cool with it. He sticks his hat out, shakes my hand, and he says, well, good luck to you in the future. And that's it. And he did that with other people that were up there also.
Let me ask Janis a question. Janis, do you recall why he did that? Why he said do you recall that happening?
Well, he's always said if someone doesn't want to be there, HCO has 24 hours to get them off the ship. He didn't want people on the ship that didn't want to be there. And so here he is putting out the survey, finds a bunch of people not wanting to be there. So to him, that's like counter intention to what he's trying to do. So remove them and get them gone. That's how he always was. And there was always, HCO would get in trouble if he found out it took longer than 24 hours to get someone gone.
Yeah, and he did that again 2 years later at the Gold Base too, right? Same thing. That's how.
Yeah, he did it every several years, but yeah, he did a big thing on that in I think 1980 or 81.
Yeah. Yeah, and he had no hard feelings. That's I had never heard that story before, Jay. That's a great story.
Yeah, no hard feelings. And so I realized at the time, it was like, well, if he doesn't have any hard feeling, why should I feel all this,
Let's go. I'm out of here.
Charge, and it's okay with him, then it should be fine. What I'm doing. So we flew over to Lisbon, then we stayed overnight there, and then flew to New York. And I just got off the plane.
Did they pay for you to fly back?
They paid for me to fly to New York, but that was it. No money. Okay. They gave me no money. So when I got to New York, I was essentially penniless. Right. And I from New York, I hitchhiked all the way to LA.
Wow.
From there.
Those were the days. You wouldn't hitchhike nowadays, but back in those days, people hitchhiked all the time.
Before I ever got into Scientology, I had hitchhiked across the United States twice, both ways. Yeah. And, I had no problem with that. But anyway, so I went back to LA. So when I got to LA, I was not, nobody, I know that I saw, nobody had ever declared me or anything like that. I was just, but I knew that I had to pay off. I found out I had a $16,000 debt. And
free-order debt, yeah.
Yeah. And I told myself, well, I'm for now, basically, I need to get a job, and not even worry about Scientology. So for the next year or two, that's what I did. I got work and started working, and then there was a point where, like I said, Scientology, forgave 70%. And said, if you come back and pay it off, you can get back in the church in good standing. So I did that. And plus a lot of the people, so I had gone to LA and I had met up with this girl that I'd met on Flag. And of course she had a lot of Scientology friends and so forth. And so while I was in LA all this time afterwards, I was still essentially a Scientologist. I was living in West Hollywood, and so forth. So, but I worked, and then I went out in the field for auditing. I did the purification rundown. Peggy and Tony Hitchman were field auditors, and they became my auditors. And that's when I met my wife, who was a clear at the time. She had attested to clear, and we ended up getting married. And the minister from our wedding was Robin Alkins. Robin and Carrie Alkins were, they were never in the Sea Org, but they were active Scientologists for many years in the LA area. Carrie was an artist, so I kind of related to her. She was partially blind, and Robin was a minister. So he married us. Tony and Peggy Hitchman came to our wedding. That was in 1982. And we still were, my wife's sister was a Scientologist and having a lot of ethics issues and so forth and so on. And we kind of I wasn't doing any classes or courses or anything. And then finally, in 1986, we were keeping an eye on things, though, because we knew David Miscavige was around and we heard all these stories. Then we find out that LRH had died.
Right.
And we went to it was kind of like the financial police. They had sort of like this big conference where they took everybody into a big room and locked the doors.
Yep.
And
that was the finance police.
Yeah. And said that, basically they're saying we should all go to the flagship to get some clearing on all this stuff that happened and so forth. And that's when we decided, that's it, we're done. We're done. We're not going to just continue on with it anymore.
That's a date coincidence key for mission holders and missions and public people in Scientology. 82, 83, when the finance police and all that stuff happened, They basically decided, we've had enough of this and we're walking away.
Right.
You
Anyway,
still friends with Tony and Peggy Hitchman after that, or no?
well, no, but I called one time. I looked up Tony Hitchman when there's been a couple of times where Scientology in LA found out that I'm in the area and that I knew L. Ron Hubbard. So they tried to salvage me a number of times, like come to my house. It was to a point where, I'm telling them don't come over here anymore, but they're trying to get me back. And so there was one point where I called just to look him up, see if he was still around, Tony Hitchman. And when he answered I got him on the phone, and he says, yeah, I live in Florida. He says, I'm 80 years old now. So he wasn't active that much or anything, I don't think, at the time. But I said, yeah, I was just checking in with you, Tony, because that was like maybe 15 years later or 10 years after he had been he wasn't actually my auditor, but Peggy, his wife, was.
Right.
I had some auditing with her.
Just so our viewers know, Tony Hitchman is famous he was from South Africa, and he did the famous L. Ron Hubbard interview that Scientology then packaged up and re-edited, put out years later. And it's actually probably one of the most in-depth, and it was staged, I think, by Scientology, but it's known as the Hitchman film, Tony Hitchman.
Right.
Huh. So we haven't been in Scientology. Her sister got out. So in the meantime, I developed a career.
Yeah, how did you get into art? And what
well, I started. I got a job right shortly after I got out of the Sea Org at a glass shop, and I started making pieces of art from glass and mirror. And I worked at the shop, and eventually was making more money doing that than I was on my regular job. So I quit and became a street artist for a number of years. Then when I got married, we started having babies. I just gave up the whole idea, ended up going to work for a general contractor, and I started doing art on the side. So I worked for 25 years for one general contractor as a superintendent, a building superintendent. I built stores primarily in Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive. I built 15 permanent stores on Rodeo Drive in my career, along with a lot of other ones. So I was in construction, and I made art using construction materials. But when I retired 5 years ago, I just committed to the art full time. So I've been a full-time artist now for.
Do you have a website or someplace where people can see your work? What's your web address? And I'll put it up on the video.
It's basically jreedart.com.
Okay.
That's simple.
So I retired and decided to get out of LA. And we sold our house and moved, trying the Midwest. My wife grew up in this area. So we moved back here, live in a beautiful place. And our house was one of the ones that burned in the Eaton Canyon fire, the fire that was up in Altadena, our old house, beautiful old house.
Let me ask you one last question before we end the video here. What are you, looking back on your time in Scientology, the Sea Organization, L. Ron Hubbard, how are your feelings about that time period?
Well, overall, I considered, it was not a bad experience for me overall, because I considered it to be kind of like going into the Army. When I was, I put in my time, I learned, how to make my bed and do all of these kinds of things, and how to get up and go to work in the morning. And yes, I got taken advantage of in a lot of ways. But overall, hey, I'm happy I wasn't in for, 20 or 30 years. But then again, I didn't get that much benefit out of the auditing because I never really had that much of it.
Right.
I never got past the drug rundown. Before I got into Scientology, I was I smoked marijuana and I didn't use that much drugs. I'd taken LSD a number of times, but not that much. And but for some reason, it just was always bogged down. I could never get through it. Yeah, and the other thing was I refused to attest to something unless I was like 100% sure that I had it. And I was never really that sure sometimes, of things. So I think part of that was me not pushing too. I was just contented with having a job and working and contributing. And I was happy when I got out. And then my life has been good ever since.
Okay, then. We want to thank you, Jay, for being here and telling your stories. It's quite something. I just wanted to let people know that if anybody else, if you're interested in more stories about L. Ron Hubbard, the flagship Apollo, or anything like that, we've got Janis's book here. This is book 1, Commodore's Messenger. That's Janis right there with L. Ron Hubbard on the Apollo when she was a young teenager as one of the original messengers for Hubbard. And then this is book 2. And that's Janis as well with Hubbard in Portugal, right, Janis? Somewhere in Portugal?
In Setchable, actually, where Jay was talking about.
Okay, great. Anyway, the books are great. They got great stories about the history of the Sea Organization and L. Ron Hubbard and Janis. They have lots of photographs if you're interested in the photographs and stuff in them. Well, you can order those books. Just go down below into the video description on this video, and there's a link to our merchandise store where you can order autographed copies of this book. Janis will autograph them for you, and she'll send them to you anywhere in the United States. You also can order the book, right, Janis, on Amazon, and right, that's the other way that they can get it?
Yes, through Amazon.
Yeah, and book 1 is in audio version as well, and Janis is working on book 2 right now on audio version, and eventually some point she'll do book 3. The other thing I want to mention, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, hit that notification button. It helps us get these stories out to other people. And we're doing really well right now, but we'd like to add more subscribers. So please, be notified the next time we have another video and another great guest like Jay here. The other thing is, if you've got any questions or comments, please go down below. We love to hear from our viewers. Any questions or stories or anything you'd like to ask Jay or us, just go down there and we read them all and we will respond to them. And finally, if you'd like to support our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the video description. Just go down there and click on that link. It's just a way to cover some of the expenses of our channel. We appreciate any support that we get from our loyal viewers. Jay and Janis, is there anything else you want to say before we end off the video here?
No, it's been great, Jay.
Yeah, it's been great. I've enjoyed it. It's good. Janis, I finished your first book, so I'm going to read the second one now.
Good, please do.
The first one ends right before I got to the ship, so.
Well, then you definitely want to read the second one because she'll cover the time period you were there. Anyway.
Right.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.